One of the missions of the Rebel Tribe is to introduce my listeners to women who, shall we say, have lived not your typical life. And so my guest tonight qualifies in spades. Welcome to the Rebel Tribe, where we work every day to empower women to see more, do more, and most importantly, to be more. My guest today is health coach nut health. I call her the health nut, but she's inspiring me too. So health coach, author, farmer, missionary, Sharon Reese. Hey Sharon, what's up?
Well, lots. My plate, my
Well,
plate is full, 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 full.
I want to get right into it because I have to admit, I did not know. I met you through your health stuff. Like I said, you were an inspiration to me. My health was kind of, I was not taking the best care of my health, let's put it that way. And when I saw you posting about running marathons and you're a little bit older than I am, I'm like, I can't even walk around the block without getting out of breath. And she's running marathons. So that was my inspiration to start taking control of my own health. But it wasn't until I was talking to your daughter, Krista, one day, and she was telling me stories of her life in Brazil in the Amazon. I'm like, the heck were you doing in Brazil? And that's when she said that you had been a missionary there. And I was like, what? I had not known that. And that just, yeah, that is totally, you're my first real missionary that I actually can call like friend and that I know. And it was, that's just not something that you hear women doing. So I really wanted to talk about that. What in the world made you decide to go be a missionary in Brazil?
Well, the story started when I was in first grade. Um, and the teacher, you know how teachers go around the room and they ask, "What are you going to be when you grow up?" And, I was one of the last ones, and I thought and thought and thought, and I did not have a clue what I wanted to do. And what came out of my mouth was, "I want to be a missionary." At the time, I did not know any missionaries. I didn't know what missions was even. You know, it just it, it just came out of my mouth, you know. And so I wanted to be a missionary pretty much my whole life.
Hmm.
Um, and there's a lot of stuff I could say about that, but it would take us all night. Um, but eventually I got a degree in English, bachelor's degree in English, then studied linguistics and became a missionary with Wycliffe Bible translators. And they worked all over the world, um, taking the Word of God to uh, people groups and languages, some of which had never been written before. And so when we went to Brazil, along the way, I met my husband after I had already decided I was going to be a missionary and probably a single one. Um, the Lord brought Rick into my life, and we just, we we had a lot of shared background, a lot of things in common, a lot of goals that we were both reaching for. And, that was 50, I think it's going to be 52 years ago this year. So um, then we went to Brazil, um, and we were assigned to uh, an Indian group that had just massacred all of the Indian agency workers in that place where we went to live. We went in there, I think, like 3 months or 4 months after the massacre. And our job was to learn their language so that would not happen again. And that was a big challenge. really
Okay.
big challenge.
Well, I will have to say that that was probably your calling, because I know what I wanted to be in first grade and second grade, and probably something different in third grade and high school. I think I changed career goals 20 times before. So for you to make that decision in first grade and stick with it, I think that was probably your calling.
Yeah, probably. So Krista was a baby at the time that we went in to this particular village. And well, actually we lived on the Indian outpost. We did not have permission to go into the village because the Indians were still very untrustworthy, very leery of outsiders. And so we spent about 2 years there trying to learn their language, but having only about 24 hours worth of contact with them in those 2 years, which if you, you were, languages, you can't learn a language in 24 hours.
No.
And so anyway, um, for various political reasons, the the government of Brazil decided they didn't want missionaries in any of the indigenous regions, and so all of us were asked to leave uh, those areas. We still had contact with a few of the speakers of that language in the city, spent, you know, several hours, several times a week, trying to learn more of their language, which was kind of difficult because they were totally out of their realm. They were in an artificial, unknown to them space, so they didn't have a whole lot to talk about. And anyway, eventually we went on to work with another hostile tribe, and then um, finally with a tribe that was actually wanted us there. They were eager to have somebody come in there, and we were in there for about, I think it was 2 weeks, when we both came down with malaria, and we had to have an emergency flight come in and fly us out. And that was the end of our time in Indian villages, because we, at that point, we had had malaria so many times that our leadership of the mission didn't want us risking, getting malaria anymore. So that took our whole mission emphasis took a different direction after that.
I've heard that about malaria, that once you get it, you just keep getting it over and over. Is that true? How many times did you get it?
I think I had it probably about 4 times, and my husband had it so many times we can't remember how many. He, but there is a treatment that you can take to completely eradicate it from your system. And when you take that treatment, you have to be bitten by a mosquito that carries malaria again, and then you're reinfected. You don't actually, if you don't take that treatment, then you can continue to have the symptoms pop up. If your um, immune system is down, or you have some other thing that makes you vulnerable, then you might have those symptoms come back. But since we left that village, I think that my husband maybe had malaria one other time after that, and that was all. We never had it again.
All right, so I got to ask this because I mean, my church, even they send missionaries on these mission trips to places. My granddaughter's gone on mission trips to Mexico, and we go but we're not missionaries. Okay. I mean, I feel a little funny every time when they say, yeah, we're missionaries going on a mission trip. It's like, no, we're not. We're not missionaries. We're going down there to, I mean, we're doing good stuff, but we're not missionaries.
Yeah,
What,
yeah,
I mean, do you have to have some kind of training to actually be a missionary or, I mean, you know what I'm talking about. When my
yeah,
granddaughter went, she went to work they worked at an orphanage. They spent time doing repairs around the orphanage. And of course they talked about God and everything, but a lot of it was more, they did work, cleaning up the orphanage and helping with repairs and spending time with the kids. And I
yeah,
always pictured missionaries, actual missionaries, as a different thing
yeah,
altogether.
yeah. There's um within any mission organization, you have people who do all sorts of different tasks to accomplish. Now, for example, the mission we went with was Wycliffe Bible translators. The main thrust was to translate the Bible into languages where there was no Bible, and um, there, that took a whole team. There were the translators, and we, of course, had to have linguistics training and very specialized to be able to take an unwritten language, write it down phonetically, and come up with the alphabet, and then be able to begin to translate. But there was a whole team, and a lot of those were, you have the maintenance team, you have the radio support, you have the pilots, you have hostesses, that make sure you're taken care of when you come and go. And, so in the context of a mission, there are lots of different things that people can do to contribute to that overall task that you're trying to accomplish.
Okay, that's a little makes a little more sense. Is that me making that noise? I keep hearing a noise. Okay. Whoever's
No, I
listening,
don't
I'm
hear it.
sorry. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. It sounds weird. Sorry.
I don't hear it. I don't hear it, Melodian.
Well, good. Then maybe nobody else hears it either.
Hopefully.
But if you've listened to me for any length of time, probably not on the actual podcast because I'm just getting started, but if you follow me on YouTube or if you've been on any of my Facebook lives or anything, then stuff happens. Okay. And I just keep moving, so we're all good.
Yeah.
Okay. So that explains a little better. I always pictured missionaries as like preachers, like
Yeah.
that's what they went there to do, then. And so when somebody says
Yeah.
they're a missionary, it's like, okay. But
Hmm.
then when I started, when my family and everything started going on mission trips, I was like, no, we're not missionaries. We're not preaching. Not, and I'm not saying preaching wasn't happening, because it was, but it wasn't being done by us. So
Yeah.
it
Right.
felt a
Yeah.
little weird to be like, yeah, we're missionaries. Nah, no, we're not.
Yeah. Well, my husband always said, I am so glad that I don't have to preach in Portuguese, and I don't, that I don't have to be a pastor and all of this. Well, after we left the working in the village, um, we began to meet together in a Bible study with some folks, and that eventually turned into a church. And there were three of us couples who started it, and the other two couples left. And so we were the pastors of the church. And so he ended up having to preach in Portuguese, um, which was never in his plan. But um, we had we had a small group, but my husband is very musical, and he we would go to these big music conferences in other parts of Brazil, and we would bring back the new music that was being produced. It was before the time of, where everybody could get a CD or they could get a cassette or whatever. Um, Most of the music was being transmitted by somebody learning the song and taking it to some place else. So in our church, we would teach the new songs, and people from all over our city, other churches, would come to our church to learn the songs and then take them to their church, which was fine with us. We were happy. That was great. We were very happy with that. Because we, as pastors, we tried to uh, encourage the pastors to work together, to be united, to be all working toward the same goal of winning more people to Christ, you know. So that was just fine with us. We and a lot of those people that were with us initially are now missionaries themselves all over the world. It's quite remarkable. It's just amazing to us, that God used us to raise up some other people to be missionaries.
So are these the people? I keep seeing pictures on your Facebook of like singing. It's a church service, and you're singing. Is that your church?
Well, we do attend a Brazilian church here in the Dallas area now, and my function there is to be the um, simultaneous translator into English for any English speakers that come to the services. Um, but our church in Brazil was quite small, and then after we left to come back to the U.S., it expanded, it grew, it multiplied. It every time we would go back for another visit, it would be, like if it started out with 100 people, the next time we were there, it was 500 people. Um, if it had 500, the next time it was 1,000. it was it was incredible. The church has grown so much in Brazil, and I it's just it's what God did. I wasn't anything special about us necessarily, you know. But
I
we did pray a lot for God to raise up Brazilians to be leaders.
I watch your videos, and it looks totally different from what I'm used to when I go to church. Is it different from like
Yeah.
American church?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Very lively. Very, very lively. um, yeah, totally different.
You gonna tell me how?
Well, um, how can I explain it? It's hard to explain. Uh, um, because we looked for a long time for a church that felt like a Brazilian church, like we were used to in Brazil. Um, and we went to a number of different churches, and they were fine. They were okay. Um, the worship was reasonably good. Um, I think the the thing that makes Brazilian worship and Brazilian churches stand out is their passion. They are so passionate about their love for Jesus. It comes out in the music, it comes out in what the way they preach, the way they um, pray, everything. It's just they're very passionate people and very warm. Everything is a kiss on the cheek and a hug and a kiss on the cheek. And, you know, so
How hard is it to learn Portuguese? Daryl and I keep talking about retiring in Portugal. So how hard is it to
oh,
learn Portuguese?
um, do you know any Spanish?
No. Well, I
Oh,
do, but I learned it when I worked in the chicken plant, so I know chicken plant Spanish.
Oh, yeah. Portuguese is similar to Spanish. Um, I think it has, oh, what would you call it? More of a melodic ring to it than Spanish does. But yeah, we learned the basics. We learned in about 5 months. But we did that by moving in with a Brazilian family where no one spoke English. It was just Rick and I, and no kids yet. So we moved in with them and learned it pretty quickly. Of course, not all the vocabulary. The vocabulary took a long time to, you know, just expand and become really fluent.
What's the best way to learn? That's how I learned Russian. It's Russian. It's immersion.
Yeah, immersion. Yeah.
It
Hmm.
works.
Yeah. Yeah, it sure does.
I want to talk a little bit about your book. Um, I read it and it really touched me. When I said author, everybody's probably thinking, since I mentioned what a, how you're a wellness coach, and they're probably thinking, oh, she wrote a wellness book, but it's not. It's got nothing to do with any of that. It has to do with your son. Do you mind talking a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I can do that. Um, when our son graduated from Wheaton College, uh, this is our middle child. Um, he got an internship in Hawaii with the U.S. Geological Survey, and he was so excited, so excited to go there. And um, during the Thanksgiving break, after he'd been there about 2 months, I think, um, he the he lived in a house with the other interns that were working under USGS also, and they were going to have a big party with alcohol, sex, drugs, who knows what, you know. And he wrote it in his journal that he would have to be away from the house for the Thanksgiving weekend because of that, that he was not going to participate in that. And so they had visited the valleys up on the Kohala. And if anybody's familiar with the Big Island, it's the kind of the northeast corner of the Big Island. They had visited there a couple of weeks before, so he decided he would hike across the 7 valleys there. He thought he could do that in 4 days, and um, we were not aware that he was doing it until after the fact, because we were visiting my sister, uh, I believe, in Iowa. And anyway, uh, on Monday, his boss called and said he had not appeared for work on Monday, and not to worry too much, but he was he'd observed his character and his integrity, and he just thought he ought to let us know that he had not appeared. And so we began to ask people to pray. So when we, not sure how to exactly weave in the writing of the book in this, but the uh, the whole story on that very first night when we heard that he had not returned, we knelt down and we said something to the effect, Lord, you have promised to give us the desires of our hearts, and you know what our desire is, that we would have our son back. But if you have a bigger plan, if you have another plan, we are asking you right now, in exchange for his life, if we never see him again, thousands for your kingdom. And that was a prayer that who would pray that anyway? You know, I mean, unless, except led by the Holy Spirit to pray it. Um, and it really turned out to be why we wrote the book, because we wanted people to know and we wanted to see that prayer answered, that many, many people would come to know the Lord personally because of what had happened to our son. And so the book pretty much outlines how the searches went. We went out to Hawaii. We went, looked, um, when everyone else was giving up, we were not giving up. And um, not until some very what do I want to say, pastors that we respected very highly said their whole church had been praying for 24 hours, and they believed that our son was not ever going to be found and that he was already with the Lord. And it was kind of, I mean, that was pretty devastating when we finally realized, yeah, that's probably true. That's probably the case. And I don't know. I don't know how people who lose a child can possibly go through it without Jesus holding them up and carrying them through, because boy, that is what he did for us. Um, he gave my husband a dream. Well, let me back up just a minute, because before, at about that time that we realized we were probably not going to see him again, the Lord asked us to go and worship him up on the backside of the Kohala. And so we got a guitar and went up and worshiped him. And secretly, without saying it to each other, we thought, oh, we'll see John come down the hill, maybe with a crutch or something, but it didn't happen. But that wasn't why we were worshiping. We were worshiping because God asked us to worship him. And we, we were doing it completely with our whole hearts. And then we went around to the trailhead where he had started his hike and worshiped there. And at that point, a double rainbow appeared in the sky right over that valley. And the rainbow is God's promise to us that he would never send a flood to destroy the world again, as he did in the days of Noah. So anyway, uh, the book tells exactly how the Lord met us, what he did. I don't know how much of that you want me to go into, Melodian, but um, it was very, very specific for Rick, and again, for me, very specific in another way, that God ministered to us and brought us through that, so that we could honestly say when we left at the end of December, we were really healed of all of that pain and hurt. I mean, seriously, I thought I would never run out of tears, ever, ever, ever. It was just such a huge loss. Um, he was the son who was our sounding board, the one who had a, a really wise counsel always, and just something really, really special about him. So the loss was huge. Not that our other kids are not special; they are, both of them, very, very special. But I, I don't know how else to put it. But he was he was unique. It was a great loss.
Did you ever find out what happened to him?
We only found out by what we felt the Lord told us. He gave my husband a dream, and in that dream, he showed him a picture of our son trying to climb his way out of one of the valleys. There, between the valleys, there were huge crevices that were almost vertical. So if you fell in one of those, you would never be able to get out. And that's the thing we think probably most likely happened. It was very, very, very rainy and slippery, and uh, most likely he fell into one of those crevices and couldn't get back out. And you could never be able to see if somebody or something was down in one of those crevices. They're just so full of vegetation and dark, deep, you know. But that's probably what happened. But anyway, in the dream, the Lord uh, appeared in this dream in white, and our son appeared in white in this beautiful meadow, green meadow, and he saw them romping and rolling in that grass together, Jesus and our son John. So that brought him just tremendous peace, having that dream. But it didn't bring me peace. It was, okay, that's okay for you. What about me? And so I said, one evening, I said, Lord, am I never going to run out of tears? I'd wipe my eyes and I'd start crying again, just nonstop. The next morning, my sister-in-law called me, who had been left a widow when my brother died suddenly when he was 34, and shared with me what my brother had told her at the time. It was the first time she had told it to me, and it was as though the Lord was sending my brother back to comfort me with his own words, and it was just so remarkable. It was amazing, and and basically my tears were wiped away. I said, okay, Lord. And there was a verse also that she shared. It was from a devotional by Max Lucado. I don't know if you've ever read any of his devotional books
Oh, yes,
or
I have.
heard of it. Yeah. And it's a verse in Isaiah. And I didn't bring up that verse. I don't know if I can find it right away. Yeah, let me find it, because yeah, it's in Isaiah 57. It says, the righteous perish, and no one takes it to heart. The devout are taken away, and no one understands that the righteous are taken away to be spared from evil. Those who walk uprightly enter into peace. They find rest as they lie in death. I don't know how many times I had read those verses, but those verses took on completely new meaning for me when she shared them with me. And it was such a very sweet, amazing way that God brought me comfort. And so we wanted to share that with the world, because so many people that we met along the way, and we have met since then, if they have a loss of a child or something like that, they go the rest of their lives just in bemoaning or, living in the past with that child. Um, and I don't think that's God's plan for us. I think it is, we are to move on, not that we forget them ever, don't ever forget them. But um, the Bible tells us that we should not grieve as those who have no hope, because we do have a hope. That because Jesus rose from the dead, we will also, and we will see him again. And um, so that is our hope. So the title of our book it's Aloha is Forever, Finding Hope in the Midst of Despair. And um, that is that's our reason we wrote it, for people who are in despair, and so that they can find hope.
Well, like I said, I've read it and it touched me. So Missionary, and then the unspeakable tragedy, and now you're on a goat farm in Texas. How did that happen? How did you get from Brazil to Texas?
Well, my husband was from Dallas originally, and his mother had Alzheimer's. And so one of the reasons we came back was to be there for her until she passed. And then by that time, we were so settled here, we just stayed, you know. Um, and yeah, we love our little farm.
I love your little farm.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty cool.
I get
Yeah.
so I tell Krista I get jealous sometimes when she's posting baby goat pictures. I so badly want goats. I can't convince my husband we need them though, but I so badly want goats.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so she raises the goats, but you grow what do you do on the farm?
Yeah, I grow vegetables mostly, and um, make sure everybody gets fed. So she doesn't have to cook. She can focus on her business. I do the main meal every day, you know, and I take care of her book work, which is driving me crazy right now, which is why I need to watch that one about the tax. Um, your podcast about the tax tips. And I also am growing microgreens. Um, I make the jams and jellies with the fruit from our orchard, pick all the blackberries, which my son keeps adding blackberry bushes. And so that gets to be a bigger job every year. Um, and then I run, of course. So
I'm glad you brought that up because I was just going to say that. And you run
yeah.
marathons?
Yeah, well,
Marathons.
that wasn't why I started. I didn't start to run a marathon. Uh, in fact, I thought when I started running, I thought, who would ever run a marathon? They must be crazy. Well, then I became crazy. So, yeah. Um, but I started basically to um, put my um, supplements to the test, to see if they were really worth what I thought they were worth. You know, could they enable me to do something really above and beyond, you know? And I had been using those same supplements for about 4.5 years at that point. And when I started, but, you know, uh, I downloaded the app on my phone, Couch to 5K. You know, my first goal was to run a 5K, because we're involved with a pregnancy care center here, and they do a fundraiser every year, a 5K. That was what I wanted to do. And my first run the first time it said run for 1 whole minute without walking. I thought I would keel over and die, Melodian. I was in such bad shape physically. I, you know, so I'd go through this app, and if I couldn't successfully do what the app told me to do, then I would do that again the next time, or even a third time in order to, you know, get to the point where I could actually do what it was asking me to do. And over time, I started that probably in April. And in December, I ran my first 5K, which up until that point, I had not run 5K yet. So that was my first time running 5K was at that race.
Well, Sharon, the more I talk to you and the more I get to know you, the more you just amaze me. Okay. So I'm so glad that you got on with us today and told us a little bit about yourself and your life. That just, like I said, it just fascinates me. When Krista was telling me she grew up in the Amazon, I was like, yeah, okay, sure
Yeah.
you did, but no, she did. Okay.
Yes, she did. Yeah.
And it was just like,
Yeah. Infested with mosquitoes and bugs and
and then
humidity and heat, and
and then when I
you
read
gotta
your
you
book, and
you have to be called by God to go to a place like that.
I only know one other that went. He was a nurse, and same thing. He took his family, and they went to do medical missionary work
Hmm.
in the
Hmm.
Amazon. So you're
Yeah.
the only
Yeah.
two I know that, I don't know, were crazy enough to do that. Or
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah.
but I nothing but respect for anyone who could do that. I like my comfort too much. I know I don't think I could hang in the Amazon,
Yeah.
but and then when I
Well,
read your book, it just tore my heart out because I've lived in Hawaii for 7 years, so I know exactly what you were talking about. And I was
oh
like,
yeah. Hmm.
it just
Yeah.
it was sad. But to see how you used that again until we actually got to know each other and you talked to me a little bit, I had no idea you'd had that much pain in your life. So you're just, you just every time I talk to you, I find out something new that's just like, really? Wow.
Oh goodness.
So
Yeah. I I will say about my running though, at the beginning, it was a struggle. It was, you're going to get up and run. No, you're not going to get up and run. Yes, you're going to get up and run. No, no. Yes. And then I would get up and I would go run. It took about probably 6 weeks of that kind of talking to myself before it became just, okay, I'm going to go run and look forward to it, you know? So, anyway, I think that's true with just about any habit.
think so. I used to run, believe it or not. I used to run before I tore up my knee. I used to run, not marathons, okay, but I have done my share of 5Ks. And yeah, when I was training, I was the same way. It's like, it's time to go run. It's still dark outside. I don't want to. No, it's time to go run.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to. The only thing that made me
Mhm.
go was that I was part of a running club. So I knew it's like, okay, there's people waiting for me. I have to go.
Yeah, right.
But
Yeah, that does help. Yeah.
honestly think if they hadn't been, it would have been like, yeah, okay, I'll go tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I don't have your self-discipline.
Well, it
So,
was easy for me because I could just go out my back door, you know, had plenty of room to run.
and you do these things now that I love that you're posting your meditations that you do while you're
Meditations of
running.
a runner. Yeah.
Yes,
Mm,
I love those, by the way.
yeah.
So
Well, that was, the verses that I shared with you in relation to my brother. Um, I think before we started recording this, uh, those came to my mind this morning while I was running. I had not read them ahead of time, but they were in my memory because I've memorized and read scripture enough that, you know, those were the ones that God brought to my mind to comfort me today. So,
And again, I'm sorry for the loss of your brother, but I'm
yeah,
glad you were able to find some comfort.
yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
thank you so much for being with us. I hope everybody finds your life as fascinating as I do. I hope that you inspire them as much as you do me, especially in my faith and in my health journey. And I wrote down that app if it still exists because I need to get back to running. And there's my
Yeah.
cat.
Hmm.
Yeah, you can see the shadowy cat. There's not a
But if,
there's not one that goes by that he does not have to get up here and go, hey,
yeah,
let me photobomb
just
the
saying hello.
cat.
Um, but if anybody is interested in our book, they can just go to alohaisforever.com and they'll find it. There is a Kindle version on Amazon also.
And I will put the link to that in the description so people can find it easily. And again, thank you so much.
Well,
And if
thank
you're
you,
loving these
Claudia.
podcasts and you're loving these ladies that I'm talking to, then please, 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 by all means, subscribe, like, share, do all that stuff. I'm just getting started, as you know, so it all helps me grow. So I would appreciate it. Just like it, share it, subscribe to it, whatever you need to do. And thank you all for tuning in. And thank you,
Yeah,
Sharon, for
thank you for
talking
having
to
me.
us.